All right, election 2020. You turn on the other networks, what do you get? You get their version of what's going on, right? And they lean this way, they lean that way, they spin you around a million times. Well, tonight, let's do it this way, Court TV style. Let's bring in Court TV anchor Michael Ayala for all the latest in what's happening in all of these lawsuits. So, Michael, let's get to it because I think it's important that we get to the facts, the law, and just get rid of the woo that's going on everywhere else.
Play it straight down the middle, Vinny.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is President Trump has said that he's going to exhaust all avenues, right? And he's actually doing that. A couple of lawsuits filed today, we'll get to in a minute. But just a few minutes ago, like less than an hour ago, it came into our newsroom that Attorney General William Barr has authorized federal prosecutors to investigate, quote, substantial allegations of voter irregularities before the election is certified. Now, remember, the states have until December 8th to actually certify and take care of all these lawsuits. So a lot going to happen between now and then. What he says to them is that these investigations may be conducted if there is clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities that, if true, could potentially impact the outcome of the federal election in an individual state. So we're going to see all these federal prosecutors descending upon these contested states, going in and looking for irregularities. We could see a lot of lawsuits coming out of that activity.
All right, so the president, though, is filing more lawsuits as we speak, correct?
Yes, he is. A couple of them will start in Arizona. The count obviously continues there. And he filed one there along with the Republican Party of Arizona. And this one has to do with an overvote. Basically, Vinny, an overvote is when you go to do your ballot, you're given a Sharpie and an empty ballot, and you put it together with the Sharpie. Sometimes Sharpies can make it look as though you're voting for more than one candidate. That's called an overvote. Now, when that goes into the electronic device, it lets you know that there's a problem. Now, when there's a problem with the ballot, Arizona law says this: if any ballot is damaged or defective so that it cannot properly be counted by the automatic tabulating equipment, a true duplicate copy shall be made of the damaged ballot in the presence of witnesses and substituted for the damaged ballot. Well, the suit claims that something else happened. They're claiming that poll workers did not do that. Now, I want to read from an affidavit. Now, this suit is a little different from the others in that it actually has affidavits, a number of them from voters who say this happened to them, and they all ostensibly read the same way. And it says, I was instructed by the poll worker that I should depress the green cast button to override the problem. The poll worker asked if this was okay with me, and did not explain that I need to correct something on my ballot in order to avoid voting for two candidates. The ballot went into the tabulator, and I believe my vote for Donald J. Trump and Michael Pence was not counted due to this action. So what should have happened was it should have been segregated, and they should have tried to put a new ballot in, but instead they had them press that green button. And what the Donald Trump and the Republican Party is asking is that these ballots be separated and the true intent of the voter be determined. But what's most important is they say this happened to so many voters, Vinny, that it's outcome determinative of not only Maricopa County, but the entire Arizona. So we could really have a change in the electoral votes here. Not enough, again, to change the election at this point, but part of a larger strategy. If they can get this done in a couple of states, could change things.
All right, well, let's talk about Pennsylvania, right? That's another big state of contention, and we've got the Supreme Court involved.
Yes, we do. On late Friday, now, first of all, let me just tell you that there was another federal lawsuit filed there as well, but let's get into the Supreme Court case. Late Friday, Justice Alito came down with an injunction, and basically he said that I'm not going to stop the overall count, but what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure that they segregate all of the late votes that arrived. If you remember, it was a state court that granted this extension of 3 days as long as your mail-in ballot was postmarked by Election Day. Well, the Republican Party there was claiming that that was a violation of state election law and constitutional law because only the legislature can do that. So Justice Alito, he said you have to segregate them. Now, it was a little bit of overkill, Vinny, because Kathy Boockvar, who is the Secretary of State, had already told all the districts that that's what they had to do, separate these late arriving ballots, because she knew that there was an issue surrounding this. Now, we also know that 3 of the justices have taken a pretty good interest in this case, right? So I wanted to find out. So I spoke to Joe Mystic. He appears on our air very often. He's from Duquesne Law School in the Pittsburgh area. And I wanted to find out what he thought, why the judges are so interested in this case. Could they take it? And could we find ourselves in another Bush v. Gore situation? Take a listen.
Election law is a little different than other types of lawsuits. In a civil suit or a criminal suit, you may not have the facts on your side, you may not have the law on your side, but through some very sharp lawyering, you can still prevail. That's just not the case with election law. You oftentimes have to file before you have all the facts because these deadlines are very tight and very short. And you really can't win unless the votes are there. It really doesn't make any difference to file these lawsuits unless there are enough votes there to change the result. And you don't always know that before you file. So you see a lot of suits that just don't have anything behind them. They're sort of placeholders. And when the court gets to them, they toss them.
Now, so there, Vinny, he was basically talking about the fact that, we saw all these dismissals, over 300 lawsuits filed, the vast majority of them getting dismissed in these lower and federal courts, even lawyers getting admonished for not having enough evidence. But as I said, today's lawsuit actually had some teeth to it. So now that as time is passing, they have the opportunity to collect evidence. We might see some of these lawsuits be a little bit more formidable.
And isn't that really the catch-22 here, if you're talking about election fraud on a grand scale, on a grander scale, right, as opposed to a little local election? It's difficult because you're under a time constraint. So even if it does exist, right, let's presume, we're making a big presumption, but let's presume that there was all this fraud. The time that you need to figure it out and to get those facts, and it's like the clock is ticking, to me it seems like it's virtually impossible to gather, and the professor said that. He said, you got to file before you have the facts. In most lawsuits, you don't do it that way, and you have time for discovery. Here, you don't have any of that.
No, you don't. And that's why, again, we saw some of these lawsuits weren't very well substantiated. But now with the backing of the federal government going in, doing these investigations, and you saw, again, the suit today really did, Vinny, as I went through the suit, had a lot of teeth to it, a lot of affidavits. They even had an affidavit from a Democratic poll worker who said, yes, I got a lot of complaints about that happening. So, again, we could see a lot of lawsuits between now and December 8th, which is the date that the states have to certify their election results. We could see a lot of lawsuits here, again, up against that time constraint that, like we saw in Bush v. Gore, coming up against that time constraint and really causing some trouble here and to try to figure out exactly who was the winner here.
Yeah, we shall see. Michael, great job tonight. Thanks so much.